Overview of the Great Depression, a time when the American economic system died and America became poor. Not everyone was poor, but many people became poor. Some people lost a lot of money, some people lost a little money, but the country as a whole became poor. You can see from this graph of the real national product, or GDP as we now call it, where in the early 1930s, the economic system stopped producing wealth. Here we see the percent change in real GDP and minus GDP from 1930 to 1933, which was the worst part of the Great Depression. So basically, the economic system died. The economic system collapsed. A dead economy finally came back little by little, and we need to understand what did the government do to make the economic system better. But it was a long depression, 10 years, at least 10 years, the 1930s. Unemployment was very high, people with no jobs. The background was the Roaring '20s, an era of prosperity. The country prospered tremendously. Good economic times. We talked about before how the bubble of the 1920s broke in 1929. In the 1920s, people bought lots of stuff on credit. Cars, radios, houses, many new consumer items bought on credit. They spent too much money, a lot of debt. People spending more money than they had. Wages were low. Wages were not keeping up with the prices of those goods. So people had a little bit higher salary, but not so high, but many new goods they wanted to buy, and they bought on credit. And too much debt is no good, of course. Another point we haven't talked so much about, but we need to talk about, is the Tomino Haibun, or distribution of wealth and income, where you have a small number of rich people, but most people are poor. Even in the 1920s, you had a new middle class, but most people were poor, fairly poor, with little savings, little safety net. The stock market, which many people invested in at the time, was an indicator of national prosperity in the 1920s, going up and up and up and up and up and up very fast, too fast. And banks lost a lot of money in the stock market crisis. When the stock market crashed, people lost money. They couldn't pay back their bank loans. Banks had invested in the stock market and they lost all their money. So we have a situation where banks have no money, which is unbelievable. This is the stock market, the Dow Jones Industrial Average. You can see after 1929, incredible crash, a huge bubble before 1929, and then the crash and a slow recovery, very slow recovery, little by little, until the 1950s. As I said, the banks crashed. The 1930s economic depression was basically a banking crisis. At the bottom of the basic foundation of the problem was banks had no money. If banks have no money, the economic system crashes, the economic system freezes. People can't borrow money, companies can't borrow money, banks don't lend money, people lose their savings. So in many ways we can say fundamentally it was a banking crisis. Many banks did not have enough cash available to match the amount of money in consumers' accounts, meaning people's savings were lost. People went to the bank to take out their money, but they could not get their money because the bank had no money. In early 1930, there were 60 bank failures per month. Eventually, 9,000 banks closed their doors between 1930 and 1933. So as I said before, the Great Depression, you have to understand, was a banking crisis. Many economic problems at this time, but fundamentally, the banks had no money. Why did banks have no money is a good test question. We will discuss more. Please think about, why don't the banks have money? Banks have money. but they didn't. Bank failures, you can see this graph by 1933, so many banks just closed. So banks closing is really unbelievable. Any economist looking at this data will be shocked because it's such a dangerous situation. If a company goes bankrupt, it's not a big problem. If a bank goes bankrupt, it's a big, 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 terrible problem. Banks closed their doors and more people lost their savings. Fear gripped depositors across the nation. People who deposited their money, who put their money in the bank, rushed to the bank. Please give me my money, my savings, all the money I saved in the bank. I need the money. The banks closed the door and said, we have no cash. We have no cushion. Shihon Kinganai, no cushion, no cash cushion which a bank needs, no capital, no cash. So more businesses went bankrupt and closed their doors, leaving more people unemployed. First, the banks went under, the banks crashed, stock market crashed, and then companies crashed. They fired workers, people stopped spending their money, so companies closed their doors, more people were unemployed, and the system goes down and down and down and down and down. Unemployment reaches even higher levels. People have no money, no jobs. Companies are not hiring, companies are closing. No one's spending money, very important point. No one's spending money. So as you can see, unemployment was very, very, very high. 1933 was the worst year, 25% unemployment. Today, with the coronavirus, we have about 16% unemployment, which is very, very high. This is even worse. The Great Depression. Basically, you can see that the economic system has died. People don't have jobs, they can't spend money, companies don't hire workers, banks don't have money. Farm prices fell, thousands of farmers went bankrupt. You can see from the face of this migrant worker and her kids, they don't know where the next meal is coming from, where she will have money to feed her children. Very terrible. The farmers had a very bad experience, long drought, longest drought in history, which is bad luck because drought means no rain. So they didn't have a virus like we have today, but they had no rain. So the farmers lost their farms. They couldn't pay for farm equipment, couldn't grow food, couldn't make money. Farmers lost a lot of money. Very, very sad history. The Great Depression, we see another unemployment graph, how high so many people losing their jobs. Not everybody. Some people had jobs, low salaries. If unemployment is high, other people lose salary, other jobs. They have a job, but the salary is usually cut. So the situation is bad. No jobs. The Great Depression was a time when people had no jobs. So finally, our discussion, we're beginning and continuing next week too. A new president came with a completely new economic policy. From 1933 to 1945, the longest serving president, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, came to give America hope. His New Deal policy gave people hope. The New Deal was a new approach to government, a new economic policy, sometimes called the 3 R's, relief, recovery, and reform. The main point is that the government took big action. For the first time, the government became very, very active, very aggressive, providing jobs, providing money, providing pensions, providing new social security systems like jobs for young people, short-term jobs for young people, CCC, Civilian Conservation Corps, but many, 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 many new programs for young people, for artists, for writers, for people who needed jobs. The government created jobs. So this is an important point to think about and discuss now and for the test. This new approach, this new economic philosophy, where did it come from? Where did this new philosophy adopted by FDR come from? Well, it came from England. It came from the father of modern economic theory, Cambridge University economist John Maynard Keynes, Who was John Maynard Keynes? He was an economist who really saved America. Some people say the father of the new economics. Even today, his ideas are very, very important. The father of new economics, economic theory, which believes that basically the government must spend money. Even if the government doesn't have money, no choice, no choice. The government, massive government spending, huge, incredible government spending because the economy is dying. When the economic system is crashing, the government has no choice. Even if they don't have money, they have to spend money. You have to spend money to get the economy moving again. If you don't, the economic system will die. So FDR's ideas, his economic policy, were based on Keynesian economic theory. John Maynard Keynes, one of the most important economists in economic history. He said that even deficit spending, so akaji, government akaji, seifuno akaji, deficit spending by the government will be necessary to save a dying economy. Even if the government doesn't have money, they have to print money. They have to spend money they don't have. They have to make money and print it because they have to create jobs and give people money so the economy begins moving again. Very basic economic theory. And so you can see the government spends so much money, national defense, public welfare, highways, public education. A lot of money was spent. When the war started in 1941, even more money was spent. Very important, Social Security tax, Ninkin, many fiscal policies, meaning economic policies, include the creation of a Social Security tax, which is money taken from your salary for your Ninkin, for your pension. So this is a new system. Before Great Depression, there was no pension, no Ninkin. One of many, many new programs the government made. The government was very aggressive and active, helping people, helping poor people, people at the bottom of society, taxing the rich. We'll talk about that later. Taking money from the rich and giving to the poor. Very, very, very high shotokuze, income tax, very, very high. Eventually, the economy showed some signs of life. The policies helped people. They gave people some hope. It was a long depression. Only with World War I, the